in honor of the 3-day weekend, Labor Day. A lot of people are out celebrating, out spending the last. Traditionally, this is the last big hurrah before the year. The summer's coming to an end. And so in honor of Labor Day and having an extra day off, this morning I want to talk about resting in the Lord, having an extra day to rest. I looked up the facts on Labor Day. When did it begin? How did it start? But Labor Day is an annual celebration of workers and their achievements. Originated during one of American labor history's most dismal chapters. Labor Day pays tribute to the contributions and achievements of American workers and is traditionally observed on the first Monday in September. It was created by the labor movement in the late 19th century and became a federal holiday in 1894. Wow. Anybody remember that, when that happened? You remember that? Was that your first life or second life?
I think I was in the womb.
Labor Day weekend also symbolizes the end of summer for many Americans, and traditionally the day after Labor Day was the start of the new school year. Life has changed. School starts in August now, but how many remember that was, you loved Labor Day weekend, but you hated it because you knew the day after it was the beginning of school. That most would go back to school. In the late 1800s, at the height of the Industrial Revolution in the United States, the average American worked 12-hour days and 7-day weeks in order to eke out a basic living. So they were basically 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we think we have it bad now with 40 hours a week. Despite restrictions in some states, children as young as 5 or 6 toiled in mills, factories, and mines across the country, earning a fraction of their adult counterparts' wages. People of all ages, particularly the very poor and recent immigrants, often face extreme unsafe working conditions with insufficient access to fresh air, sanitary facilities, and breaks. In the wake of this massive unrest, the labor unions were formed during this time, and they began to do strikes. And in the wake of all of that, an attempt to repair the ties with American workers, Congress passed an act making Labor Day a legal holiday in the District of Columbia and the territories, and on June 28, 1894, President Grover Cleveland signed it into law, therefore having the holiday. Holiday is also another term for holy day. It's a holy day. God had holy days in the Old Testament to take time to celebrate, and so we continue that tradition. I have a video here on Labor Day.
I am blessed to be given the ability to labor, to do good with my talents and efforts, to give to my co-laborers with an open hand, and honor our relationships with Christ's love. I am blessed to earn wages, to take care of those whom I love, to share with those in need, to give back to God a portion that He's so kindly given to me, and to enjoy the goodness of life. I am blessed to have the strength of the Lord, to be useful in this world, to be used by God in big and small ways. I am blessed also to rest, to gather with those I cherish, to close my eyes and take the time to dream, to renew myself in the Lord once again. As I follow God from day to day, I will appreciate my work. It is my portion from the Lord and a gift. May God keep me occupied with gladness of heart, in work and rest. Amen.
Both work and rest are God-honoring activities, and we are created in the image of God, and in the image of God, God worked, and work is a good thing. God also established the Sabbath as a day of rest. God rested after 6 days of creation. Now, it's a good thing to work, and work is part of our DNA to do activity and to now it's earn a living, but before it used to be you worked for your living, that you worked the fields or you had a trade that you did, and then the factories came in and we went to work in factories, and now there's all kinds of jobs that we do to get money to sustain our living, and that's all a good thing. In fact, the Bible says if a man doesn't work, he ought not to eat. So work is a good thing, but also rest is a good thing. Rest is also God-honoring. In fact, in Genesis 2, verses 1 through 3, it says this: "Thus the heavens and the earth and all the hosts of them were finished." God worked for 6 days, and he says it was finished. "And on the seventh day, God ended his work which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had done. And then God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because in it he rested from all his work which God had created and made." God made the Sabbath. It was a day of rest. Now, the interesting thing is, it wasn't because God was tired. It wasn't like God was after 6 days going, "Whew, that was a lot of work. I need a day of rest." The Hebrew word Shabbat, or Sabbath, Shabbath, translated rest, does not refer to a requirement to sleep or take a break due to weariness. In the vast majority of verses in the Bible, the word is translated as some form of stopping or ceasing from work or a task. So after 6 days, it says God stopped working. And he said he made it holy. He made a Sabbath day, a day of rest, that he knew, not that he needed it, but that we would need that day to repair and to recover, to begin again the next day. And so the word Sabbath means it's just a ceasing or a stopping. Taking a Sabbath rest is an act of faith. It is a reminder that no matter what we do, God is in control. So we stop for a day. We cease from work for a day. It's a step of faith. There's a lot of stores that believe that you have to be there 7 days a week, as many hours as you can, to make as much money as you can, except for good old businesses like Chick-fil-A. The who? Hobby Lobby are closed on Sundays. RC Willey. See? Very good. Okay? Opposed to how many that are still open on Sundays. Even in Texas, when I went to Bible college in San Antonio, they used to have what was called a blue law, that you could only buy groceries. You couldn't buy anything other than groceries. So like the supermarkets that had the variety, the supermarket that had pretty much everything, pots and pans, you couldn't buy those on Sunday. You could only buy food on those days. What's amazing about those businesses is they close on one day, and their sales are through the roofs. A lot of times they lead, and Chick-fil-A is one of the top fast food restaurants in America, and they honor God by closing on Sunday, honoring the Sabbath. Taking the Sabbath rest is a step of faith. You're trusting God to provide. When we cease from pursuing our material goals for one day each week, we're saying, "God, I trust you to maintain control while I spend this day focusing on you. I trust you to provide for my needs 7 days a week, even if I only work for 6 of them. Regardless of how much money I could earn today or how much remains on my to-do list from that last week, today I'm going to rest my mind and my body and bask in your presence." The more we work, the less we focus on God. The more we are distracted, the less we acknowledge God. We are created to be in his presence and to be at rest in order to continue to understand our purpose. As we celebrate and we take an extra day of rest, how many people cram more stuff in? Okay, so I have another extra day off. How much can I get done in this day? Or Sunday, how much can I get done on Sunday? I don't have to go to work. Saturdays and Sundays are usually just as busy as Monday through Friday, if you happen to have a 2-day weekend off, that we cram as much stuff as we can. And God taking a Sabbath, taking a day of rest, and even tomorrow, taking an extra day to recharge, repair, but not just to lay around and do nothing. It's also a day to focus on God, to recharge mentally and physically and spiritually, of keeping our focus on God, knowing, trusting Him that He's the one that gives us the strength and the energy to do what we do. From his book, Created with Purpose, Robert Shaw writes, God designed us to be at rest regularly, okay? Regularly. Out of a 24-hour period, He designed part of that for us to, now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. That we are supposed to, we need to recharge our bodies, however long you can go. At some point in the evening, your body starts going, it's time to shut down. It's time to go to sleep. Okay, God made us to need rest, to rest regularly. Yet rest is foreign to our lifestyles. Our medical, emotional, and mental health will take a beating, and we may experience physical exhaustion and breakdown. Many medical conditions emerge as a result, and they become a distraction to our purpose. When our schedules are so full and pushed to the limits that we're not getting the sufficient rest that we need, it can lead to other problems. Next slide. Sleep is increasingly recognized as important to public health. Because if I don't get sleep, I'm going to kill somebody. That's why God gives babies to young people. Because old people need their sleep. Sleep is increasingly recognized as important to public health, with sleep insufficiency linked to motor vehicle crashes, industrial disasters, and medical and other occupational errors. Do you know that in the studies that they have done, sleep deprivation is worse driving than being inebriated, than drunk driving? The sleep deprivation causes more accidents than alcohol. Individuals who experience a lack of sleep are also more likely to suffer from chronic diseases such as hypertension, diabetes, depression, and obesity, as well as as from cancer. Increased mortality and reduced quality of life and productivity. And that's from the Institute of Medicine 2006. The National Institute of Health suggests that school-age children, okay kids, good thing they're gone. They need at least 10 hours of sleep daily. Teenagers, write this down, need at least 9 to 10 hours, and adults need between 7 and 8 hours. However, because of demanding work schedules, 24-hour television, and constant access to electronic technologies, most individuals are getting far less than what is needed to rest and be replenished. God designed us to need rest, to replenish ourselves, to take time for rest, relaxation, and sleep. Now, some have made this an art form. That some may need to learn the work ethic and not so much the rest ethic. But we won't talk about that today. Today we're talking about the need God has designed us for rest. And so it is becoming an increasing problem among teenagers that there are studies being done talking about the constant stimulus because they go to sleep with earphones on, they go to sleep with TVs on or radios on, that it keeps their mind alert and they're not, even though they may be sleeping, they're not falling into the deep sleep that is needed, and it's starting to create other emotional problems because they're not getting enough good quality sleep. Parents, you need to be aware of that. You need to be careful what we're allowing our children with the new technologies and everything that is at their disposal, the phone. I have heard that there are some kids that cannot go to sleep without having their phone either in their hand or right beside them because they're so afraid of missing something. Do you think they're getting very much sleep if they're subconscious and they're in their psyche they're thinking, I can't miss a call. I can't miss a text. I can't miss what's going to happen. If somebody posts something on Facebook, I have to see it.
It's called FOMO, fear of missing out.
FOMO. They have a name for it. Fear of missing out. You wrote a whole paper on it. I'm preaching to the choir. Okay. And I wish I could say that that is just relegated to teenagers. But how many adults are stuck with their iPhones and their iPads and their computers and they're just as involved with it? Okay, it's creating a problem. And I'm here for your public health. I'm here for your safety. I am talking to you because I am concerned about your health, your mental stability, that we need to rest. God designed the Sabbath to make it a whole. Remember, Sabbath wasn't created because God was tired. The Sabbath word is a choice to stop. It's a decision to refrain from. It's a step of faith that kids, you need to put your phones away. They were so reverent. They were bowing in prayer. Yes. It's amazing that the Shekinah glory was shining down on their face was aglow. That's good. I like that.
I got in trouble in history class.
But seriously, folks, God designed rest because he knew we needed it. Rest is important. Hebrews chapter 4 says this. Now, if Joshua had succeeded in giving them this rest, God would not have spoken about another day of rest still to come. So there is a special rest still waiting for the people of God. For all who have entered into God's rest have rested from their labors, just as God did after creating the world. So let us do our best to enter into that rest. But if we disobey God, as the people of Israel did, we will fail. The Sabbath rest does not celebrate God's creation, but celebrates God himself. The Sabbath is a preview of heaven, where we will cease from labor, striving and languishing, and where we will forever enter into God's rest. Excuse me. So the author of Hebrews encourages to enter into God's rest rather than falling into disobedience. Okay? There is a rest. Eventually, we're going to, as we die and go into, or Jesus comes back and we go into heaven, that is going to be our eternal rest. But before we get there, God invites us, and the writer of Hebrews is saying, enter into the rest that God has for us. Okay? Well, what is that rest? The rest is a ceasing from striving. What does the word striving mean? Strive means make great efforts to achieve or obtain something, struggle or fight vigorously. We live in a world that is increased, the speed is increasing, the technology and everything that is bombarding us is we're constantly at a go. There are obstacles that get in our way. There are things that hold us back. Physical illness, opportunities at work, life itself, anything that you want to do for God, for in life, there's going to be obstacles. There's going to be hardships. There's going to be difficulties that need to be overcome. And when we get into a process of striving, of intense, the great efforts to achieve or struggle or fight vigorously, when we get into that fight that I've got to make this happen, I've got to make this happen, this has to happen, I have to fix this, I have to get, and life begins to get this pace of it has to happen, I've got to get through this, I've got to fix this problem, that it creates a weariness in us. That I've got to get the promotion. I've got to get the next thing. I've got to have the new iPhone, so I have to work harder. Whatever the goal is in front of us that is causing us to push ourselves creates a striving in us, and a striving zaps us of energy. Whenever we have that intense push to make something happen, we're not resting. We're not allowing our bodies to rest. And remember, the Sabbath rest is a step of faith. It's trusting that God will provide. And in life, There's so many things that push against us and push us to excel, to be the best, that we're killing ourselves. And entering into the Sabbath rest, enter into the rest that God has for us, means that when we become a Christian, when we give our lives to God, what we're saying is, God, you're now in control. So, Pastor, does that mean that I don't have to do anything? That I can just trust God to provide everything for me? No. Because work is still part of our DNA. That He wants us to work. He wants us to be involved. But He wants us to trust Him in what we're doing. To trust that He's in control. And when we face an obstacle, when we face a difficulty and a hardship, it's not to strive, it's not to fight vigorously to get through it. It's, God, I'm trusting you. What do you want to do in this situation? Sometimes we can work so hard to push through something, and God is saying, do you realize that that's me you're fighting against? But God, how could you be against this? How could you not want this for me? Because I'm more concerned about you. I'm more concerned about what this is doing to you. And right now, this thing that you're going after probably wouldn't be good for you. And I need you to learn to rest, to trust me, that I will provide, that I will take care of you. Now, there's nothing wrong with achievement. There's nothing wrong with goals. There's nothing wrong with getting ahead. There's nothing wrong with bigger houses and nicer cars. There's nothing wrong with that until it consumes you, until you're striving to get it, until that's all you think about. And it's creating an energy inside of you that's zapping you, that's robbing you, that is actually pulling you away from God. Remember, the Sabbath is to help us to focus back on God. It is to take a day of rest. It's to cease from our work, to remind ourselves. Why do we come to church on Sunday? Because God just wants 2 hours of your time. No. It's to stop from our work. It's to reflect. It's to remember. It's to re-engage with God. Now, does that mean we're not engaged with God during the week? No. But we need a time that we cease from our labor. Where we say, God, I trust you. God, I remember you're in control. God, I need to take this time to worship you. That you're the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And God, this thing I'm going through right now, it's not too big for you. And God, I'm going to rest. I'm not going to weary myself out. I'm going to trust that you're going to work at it. This morning, Billy talked about that weariness. There's times, if that was for nobody else, that was for me. There's times that I look at what's not happening, who's not here, all the empty blue seats. And I say, God, you got the wrong person. It's too much. I can't do this. And it gets weary. And it gets tiring. I'm no different from any of you. There's things in your life that weary you, that's tiresome, that's hard, that's not happening. And it's a great tool of the enemy to get us to look at what's not happening. And then we work a little harder. We push a little harder. We take it upon ourselves. That verse in Hebrews talks about don't sin as the Israelites did. What was the sin of the Israelites? They thought they could do it without God. They pushed God out. Remember, God is the one that brought them out of Egypt. God, through the 10 plagues, They just followed the signs. They just followed the cloud and the fire. And they marched out. God delivered them. And they forgot who was their deliverer. And they began to work. They began to do it themselves. They began to figure out how they could do life apart from God. And guess what? It became burdensome. It became weary. God doesn't want that to happen to us. And it's learning to let go. It's learning to trust Him, that He's in control, that He knows what's best. And in the wearying and the fighting and the striving to try to make things happen, it robs us of the rest that God intended for us. Matthew 11. Come to me, all you who labor and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. This is Jesus talking. Jesus saying, come to me, all you who are labor and heavy laden, wearied down, burdened down with life's cares, with life's responsibilities, and I will give you rest. Well, God, how do you give me rest? It's by learning to let Him be in control. It's learning to say, God, what is it that you've called me to do? What is it that you're asking of me? And learn to rest in that. You know, sometimes God sends us through seasons where it's not about getting ahead. It's about enjoying the people around you. It's learning to be content with life. Learning just to rest in whatever stage of life that you're in. Come to Him and He will give His rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart. What do we learn from Jesus? If we look at the life of Jesus, Jesus said, I only do what I see my Father doing. There was lots of needs all around Him. There was lots of things that Jesus could have done as God. Healed the masses. But He only healed a few. He said, I only do what I see my Father do. I'm only responsible to what the Father lays upon me to do. Are we only doing what the Father has laid upon us to do? I am gentle, lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden light. Sometimes we get weary because we've taken too much upon ourselves. There's times that we all just need to come back to God. Say, God, I trust you. I rest in you. You're in control. I may not have the answers today, but you do. And when I need the answers, you'll give them to me. In Christ crucified and risen, we find eternal rest, and we are restored to communion with God. The lost treasures of Sabbath are restored. We rest in Christ from our labor of self-sufficiency, and we have access to the Father. As we meet with Him, He shows us Himself, His ways, His world, His purposes, His glory. That we rest from self-sufficiency, that dependency upon ourselves to get it done. Yes, we are to work. Yes, there is a job for us to do. But it is not in our labor alone that we get it done. That with His help and learning how to rest and trust Him, that we can accomplish far more than if we just do it in ourselves. In Matthew chapter 6, Jesus said, when you pray and when you fast and when you give, expecting that we would do it, that there's something about acknowledging God's sufficiency in our giving. That God established the tithe, the 10%, to say, I can do more with 90 than you can with 100%. The same with prayer. I can do more with the leftover time. If you'll take time to seek me, I can do more. God can do more through us with whatever time is left than if we use the whole time ourselves. A principle that in fasting, the giving up of food that makes us weak, God can do more in our weakness than we can at full strength. Do we believe that?